All right, so welcome to this week's episode of our Franchise Accelerator podcast. What we're really dialing in on this week is one of the 5 elements that you need to have in order to franchise, which is brand awareness. So what we really believe is whether it's 5 years from now, 10 years from now, we want to start thinking of your business as not just your asset, but your investment, right? What is it generating every month? What is it going to, right? How much return are you getting on this investment? And it all starts with these 5 elements. And what we've done, and intentionally, is put brand awareness first. Because I think as an independent, sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day, we want to serve a good product, we want to have a customer, but we forget about some of those intangibles that take our business from just a business to a brand. So today we have Scott, and he's going to help us kind of dig in a little bit. Scott, what are some of the core elements of a brand?
Well, I think you need to be true to what you want to do for not only for your customers, but for your staff, and how to do that. Are you serving fresh food? Is that, are you a scratch kitchen? Are you, value-based? Are you high-end? Really, it's not that the great brands don't evolve over time, but they're true to what they want to be. They have a plan. Maybe at some point they change the plan or go in different directions. But I think that's the biggest thing, is make sure you know what you want to be so you can kind of market that out, brand manage that out, and get to your customers what you want your brand to be.
Exactly. And I think, as a starting point, it's really looking at your menu, right? Looking at the products you offer and making sure that all of those products are true to the brand that you are trying to create. So I'll use the example of Starbucks, right? Like, they're not afraid to charge $5 for a cup of coffee, right? Whether it costs them $5 or not, they're going to charge $5 for that coffee. And, I think the point of that is it doesn't have to be about cost, right? It doesn't have to be about price. That you are trying to add value to your customer and find the price point that works for you. And to them, they'd rather be higher and show that they are higher than lower.
Yeah, they're going on, their quality's that good, and their quality is maybe higher than their competitor. And let's use like a Dunkin' as an example, right? That they know they're direct competitors, but for Starbucks, they're not really fighting over the cost part or the retail price. This is our price. We don't really care what our competitor's doing. We're very confident that our product is our product and that our customers are willing to pay this by maybe higher end service. Maybe they're getting better people to serve the coffee. Maybe they feel that their interior decor is nicer. They're creating an environment that people are going to come maybe sit a little more and use their free Wi-Fi or bring in some higher end items on a pastry area, whatever they want to do to make sure that that's what they're doing. And it's okay.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah. And I think the other thing here, that the difference between the independent and the brand is just really looking at what is your customer coming in the door for, right? If you're a Dunkin', your customer's coming in because you're quick and they're probably on the go. Dunkin' on the go, right?
Yeah, you stole that line from them. Yeah.
Right. Like, that is probably what the Dunkin' customer is doing. Starbucks customer is probably coming in, going to sit a little while, maybe not in a rush, although they could be. But, really that's kind of what they're selling, is more of that third place, that environment, and, the atmosphere when you walk in the door. So for you, as an independent, what are some of those things? Because we don't have to be both, right? But we really want to dial in, what is your customer coming in the door for? And I think, some great examples of this were, during COVID, I think it was a really good time to assess, like, why are my customers ordering from me? Because, right, all of a sudden, they're not going to come in the door. So either they're going to continue to order or they're not. But now all of a sudden we could see, well, they're really coming because they like this item, or they like, this thing on my menu, or it fits, dietary things. But really gave us a time to look at it, and also gave us a time to pivot. I mean, one of my best examples was we had a client who was high end, in the city. Obviously, nobody's coming in the door, and all of a sudden, overnight, it was like, if they went chicken fingers and pretzels, we're going to do chicken fingers and pretzels, right? We're not going to go down with the filet, right?
Sure.
So, sometimes there's adaptation there. But I think, what have you seen in an independent on how you learn, like, why your customer is coming in the door?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, then making sure that know what that is and know what your competition is doing and knowing who you want to be. And then if it's, hey, you're going on great service, right? We're going to the friendliest servers. We're going to awesome atmosphere. It's going to be a fun environment, maybe TVs, maybe music, however you want to do it. That's great. I think always you're going to need the great food, right? That's going to kind of carry whatever else you want to do. But is it quick service? Are you trying to get that customer in and out quick? Maybe gearing to a family with children that want that. As we've seen to-go take off, are we being efficient and are we getting it right? I think it's more time than ever. I mean, I do a lot to go. I mean, I would be generous to say it's a 50% correct rate. Like, I was at a restaurant the other day and I'm taking the food out and the guy next to me goes, "That's smart." And I look at it and I go, I feel bad doing it, but that restaurant...
It's probably wrong.
It's really wrong. I feel bad that someone has to watch me, but if you're going to push to-goes, you got to be really good at to-goes and making sure that everything's in the bag, that the product's still carrying that way. And I think, as COVID taught us, you need to be good at other areas. That you can't just rely on maybe great service anymore. You have to have great food to back it up. Yeah. And then you have to have, making sure that everything's getting kind of I's dotted, T's crossed with that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I've found as you do this, because again, one of our, missions here on the Franchise Accelerator podcast is to really just get you thinking about these things, right? Continual improvement is something that's, really driving your business forward and will drive your business forward. But, these can be little changes over time. So it doesn't mean blow up your menu, stop,
right.
Never serve a burger again. Like that's not what we're saying. But what I've found is the more we dial into that brand, your sales actually get better. Because you start to look at your customer and say, what are the other things that they want, right? What are the things that I could add to drive up ticket prices, but that fit that particular customer? So I like to look at it as, your avatar, right? Like who's your ideal customer? Is if you're quick serve, is it, the mom with 3 kids? Is it the business person who's grabbing lunch quickly? Who is that person? We have, one client who really has always done a lot with corporate, right? Has done a lot with business lunches, people, grabbing lunch when they go back to the office. And they found a whole avenue just in corporate catering because those same people who were grabbing lunches and going back to the office, they already knew their brand, right? They already knew the food was good and they wanted to see it anyway. So adding it to the corporate lunch and getting the lunch bought by their business, it was a win for everyone, right? So I've found a lot of times by digging into this, it's not extra work. It's actually going to add sales to your restaurant as well.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. And I think as people are maybe working from home a little more or it's just changing a little bit, you need to change how you're doing it. Maybe you're not doing it. Maybe you're doing more of the lunch catering, or maybe it's finding offices that have people in there 3 days a week. And maybe it's one of those days you can capitalize and do lunch for those 12 or 14 people in. Maybe you're in a business district and happy hour used to be your go-to. It's really good. Well, maybe that's dropped down a little bit. Maybe it's now going to a dinner special or a later happy hour because they're coming from somewhere else. I think that's where people just need to think outside the box a little bit to align with what your brand is and what you've done, but maybe just adjusting from what you've done before based upon where your customers are right now.
Yes, exactly. And I think the next level of brand awareness is making sure that your marketing also knows your brand awareness, right? So if you know your ideal customer is the corporate person who's grabbing lunch, going back to the office, does your marketing team know that, right? Do they know, is that speaking to them in the post they're doing, in the Instagram they're doing, right? If they're posting about dinner and you know that your lunch crowd is your crowd, right? We want to make sure that there's a clear connection. Because I think that's the other thing that you see a lot with the chains is they have such clear messaging, right? Like they have such a clear, you know exactly what they're trying to do and you know exactly who they're talking to.
Right. Yeah, and they had an event coming up and they were getting ready for that. It was window clings and it was email blasts and it was maybe something on the check presenter, right? They were going all in on whatever that next event was. And I think just because you're an independent, maybe not, you don't have 200 restaurants, that's okay. But if you're doing next event, how are you getting that to your customers? Yeah. Is it through your Facebook? Is it through your Instagram? Is it through the people at the door? How do you want to do that? And is there a clear message to them that this is what we have going on, this is our next big,
Exactly. And I think the other thing, to really think about this here is just making sure that you're always ahead, right? So like those limited time offers, making sure that you always have something new. I mean, I think there's no surprise when it seems like every quarter, if not every month, there's always this new item. And I would say, going back to the cost, it's usually an item that has a good margin, right? So not surprising that Starbucks is all of a sudden selling lemonades that probably have a 5% cost of goods sold. Right. But you can find those things too that are exciting, they're new, they fit your brand, they fit what you're trying to do, and they also have great margin.
Yeah, and you can follow what, and we talk a lot of time, is sometimes you can follow what the big restaurants or what the big places are doing, right? If Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks is all pushing lemonades and you're a coffee shop, you might want to then push lemonades.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be off-brand of what you're doing, but know that there's probably already a lot of dollars spent, and you can use that research market and say, you know what, we can do our own version of lemonade. And maybe it's a raspberry lemonade or a strawberry lemonade or whatever it is that maybe your restaurant wants to focus on, but using that, it's probably working if a lot of other restaurants are doing it. Not copying, just using that, information.
Yeah. And I think this is what also comes back to that where your time should be spent, right? I think as we're growing and we're scaling and we're really trying to get to that next level, I hate to say it, but your time isn't at the beach, right? And if it is at the beach, you should be on your laptop a little bit, because I really think you as the owner need to be involved in these conversations, right? You know the brand that you see in your head, and now we just need to make sure that that brand vision that you had is reality. And I think making sure that you, the owner, are paying attention to this, making sure you, the owner, are looking at, number of guests in every week, check average every week, check average differential between stores, and really raising your expectation, right? For your brand, what is the check average? For your brand, what is the breakfast sale? And not leaving it up to chance, but really driving those sales and those numbers.
Yeah, because if your brand's growing, you want it to still represent what you or your original vision was and what it's going to be moving forward. And that doesn't mean it can't change in some ways. As you go from 1 to 5 restaurants, there could be some aspects of your restaurant that is changing. It's just inevitable, how it's going like that. But your core values of what you are, if you're, serving great Mexican food and now you're 4 or 5 restaurants in and that concept is dwindling a little bit to not what you want it to be, that's where we see a lot of restaurants can fail because, restaurant 3 or 4 isn't really as good as restaurant 1. And I think that's where a lot of even the bigger companies have seen issues when they're trying to expand either too quick or just not know a real clear vision of what their brand should be at restaurant 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Right. And I think so much of that comes down to making sure your customer knows who you are, right? So many times when we talk to, multi-unit owners, restaurant group owners, what they think they are and what the customers think they are sometimes 2 different things, right? And sometimes it just comes down to brand awareness. If you're known for your salsa, right, have your customers taste your salsa, right? There's nothing wrong with educating your customers on why you're different, right? Okay, you offer burgers, but there's got to be some sort of sauce or story behind the sauce or my mom's recipe or whatever it is. But does your customer know that?
Right. That's a question. I think, I worked for the Cheesecake Factory for a long time. That was on the menu is how it started. Yeah. The founder of the Cheesecake Factory, because his mom found a recipe for a slice of cheesecake in a newspaper and started making it. So I mean that's 40 years later, that's still the story of the brand. The brand awareness that we're talking about right now is very strong, and it's still built around these fresh made cheesecakes and a lot of varieties. That is because it started with one idea and it came true to that. It's all a lot bigger now, but that's still the original vision of that brand.
Yeah. And I think that's also the struggle, right? Like as an owner, sometimes you don't want it to be about you. We have a few clients where if they would let us market like that story, I think it would really go. But it's like, I don't want it to be me. It doesn't need to be me. It's about the food. But people love that story, right? Like your customers love that stuff, right? And I'm sorry, but I think it's a picture on the wall of one of our guys, you at the farm, whatever it is, people want to know about you, right? They want to know what they're buying. And I think, especially being an independent, that's what you have on the other guys, right? Like if your milk is from the farm down the road or your ice cream's from the farm down the road, like we want to tell them that. We want to celebrate that and not be afraid of putting ourselves out there, because I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, it's a connection that you make with them, right? You made that sort of connection. I think it's why a lot of the restaurants we see that are successful now after COVID are successful because they already had a connection with their customers. And when the world changed, those customers were very loyal that they're still going to make sure that independents were going to survive. And I think those are the ones that we saw out come back maybe even stronger because they were doing things before they did that, made some changes, and now they came out and now they're expanding, now they're growing because they realize how loyal their customer base is based upon what they did before that.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think, making yourself part of your story, making sure that you are there representing your brand, right? Even little things like your logo shirt, like making sure that your brand has a message, but that it could be part of you is that message.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I think, a lot of the bigger brands are encompassing all that in their, what's their global footprint? That's part of their messaging now. That's part of their brand. If you look at the big companies, they're talking about that a lot more because they want their customers to relate and have that same feeling about why they're coming there. A lot of, where these fresh ingredients are coming from, right? We're seeing a lot of that from the restaurant side. Yeah. Customers are caring more than they ever had on really the values of the company. And we've seen that going the wrong way for a couple of companies now that didn't really execute that well. There's a pizza company that happened to, and a beer company, right? That didn't see that coming.
Didn't know their brand awareness.
And how quickly changes were made on organizational because of it. And I think that's where that brand is just so strong. That's why you don't realize how much your customers care about what you believe and what you're pushing.
Yes. So that's where, for this week, right, the assignment, the homework is we want you to assess your brand, right? Be the outsider looking in. Even ask if you feel like you know it too much, maybe ask a new hire, right? Say, hey, I want you to go and tell me what my brand represents to you. Tell me what you see out there both on my social media, that you see as you walk in the door, and really put that together and present that to me. Because that is a great way to make sure that what you have in your head is resonating with people in your restaurant every day. And if it's not, if the two are disconnected, that's okay, right? Like there's lots of opportunity to change, but it starts with you, the owner, investing time in building this brand awareness and making sure that it's driving sales into your restaurant.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we will see you on the next episode, and good luck with your brand awareness homework.